This is Nepal. I am from Nepal. It is a small landlocked country sandwiched between two major economic powerhouses, India and China. It is home to as close as 30 million people. It is a developing country and has been for a very, very long time. Growing up, it was always easy to blame the government, politics, politicians, people in power for our stagnant everything. Education, economy, infrastructure, traffic, price hikes, rolling blackouts, etc. And I almost always did. Not that I still don't blame them. Taking this class and also the Intro to International Studies, learning about the wider scope and patterns of failed economies and states, and learning that there are reasons beyond politics and government, pre-existing, unblameable, tangible, nothing you can do about it, permanent reasons to why we are still held back from the rest of the world. So I have come to expand this list of things I can blame, and it now includes Nepal's geography, history, trade barriers, infrastructure, which I guess just goes back to the government, but let's not go there. Looking at the geography of Nepal, it is a small yet a beautiful, impeccable, landlocked country, just a little bit smaller than Illinois. Being a landlocked country, we are naturally limited and super prone to costly transportation and communication, which makes it difficult for anything and everything. If we need to ship anything here, it goes through an excruciating process. It first needs to be shipped to India or Singapore or Jakarta before it flies to Kathmandu, or it can be directly flown into Kathmandu. And by the time we receive the product, it has been taxed several times that doubles and triples and even quadruples the price. Especially if you're buying a car. Let's take, for example, that you're buying a car that is worth $30,000 in the US. By the time it gets here, and an additional 250% tax that the government charges you on all vehicles, it's a whopping $160,000. So far, we've only been looking at Nepal from the international, global perspective. If you look into Nepal's internal, domestic geography, it isn't too great either. Even within Nepal, we have a complex geography. There are 1,310 mountains in the north, record-breaking tall. Out of the tallest 10 peaks in the world, 8 of them are in Nepal, and they're all above 8,000 meters. There's another geographical region just below that. It's the hilly region, home to thousands of hills. And just below that, i.e. the hilly region, lies the Tarai region, the plains to the south near the Indian border that is continuous till northern India. And to remind you, this is all within 147,516 square kilometers, which is almost roughly the size of Illinois, but Illinois is still a bit bigger. Even within this very small area, we have a very diverse and complex domestic geography that impedes economic growth and harms many things along its way. So Nepal's geography, both on the global and domestic scale, is a pre-existing and permanent condition that works as a natural setback. But in addition, there's poor infrastructure, domestic factors, which I view as one of the first problems we should be solving. Poor infrastructure kind of sounds like an understatement to what it could mean for development. Poor infrastructure should be severe damage causing. In the article, An Award and a Warning, the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize by Sarah Tucker and Timothy Sisk, they mention how governments can choose to boost development by making policies to provide public goods that contribute to economic growth and prosperity. And they also note the importance of physical infrastructure as a public good that comes under economic infrastructure, such as roads, airports, railroads, utilities, ports, and the like, which are necessary to allow trade and exchange. I wanted to exhibit this in a simple story of apples. The best apples that I've ever had are from Manang. It is a small district in Nepal, located in the mountain region. There, heavenly apples grow. It is inexplicably the best apples, hands down. The people there grow organic apples, no fertilizers, chemicals, pesticides, catalysts, etc., nothing. Organic like you've never known. But growing up, we didn't often get to eat apples from there. Nepal did not sell Nepalese apples to Nepalese within Nepal. Instead, Nepal imported apples from China and India, and sold those imported apples from China and India, and still continue to do so. Meanwhile, the Nepalese apples continued to be unable to be exported or sold to any market due to the lack of physical infrastructure, since it's in the mountainous regions. In Manang, these precious apples, in hundreds and hundreds of kilos, went to waste or were instead fed to their cattle. While in other parts of Nepal, children remained malnourished and were unable to, and still are, unable to receive nutritious foods, fruits, vitamins, etc. But Manang is only 268 kilometers away from Kathmandu, while India is roughly 900 kilometers away and China's above 1,000. And yet, the fruit market is inundated with fruits from China and India. This kinda has changed in the past 3 years or so. I can see more Manangi apples being sold in the groceries these days, but not at the rate we all would want it to. While this could be, or could have been, pointed to the geographical impediment, but it's 2021 and humanity might be leaving for Mars not too long from now. And here we are, still unable to transport goods from one place to another. From the Tarai region to the mountain, or the hilly region to the mountains, and vice versa. All due to the lack of good physical infrastructure, or poorly built roads, or non-existent roads. We could partly blame the geographic impediments, but also we are missing out on the major domestic factor of the actors and their interests. In our book, it is mentioned how important stable and reliable environment is for long-term economic growth. When we're looking at stable and reliable environment for a state, Nepal's government has been highly unstable. Recently, the Prime Minister had tried to dissolve the parliament and was partly successful. There have been over 7 different constitutions for a time span of 6 decades, and there had been a decade-long Maoist insurgency that lasted from 1996 to 2006. And if there's one thing I've learned from reading these articles, political instability is congruous with food insecurity. As Sarah Tucker and Timothy Sisk have stated in their article, food insecurity has strongest links to evidence in states that have fragile markets and weak political institutions. And as Ida Rudolphson said, hunger does not occur in a vacuum. It is a consequence of misgovernance, marginalization, and fragility. It has only been recently since Nepal has been growing a bit stable. And if you look at the data, it is clear that Nepal has the potential to overcome hunger and starvation. Nepal has a good arable land ratio. It's 14.7%, and that's for almost 30 million people, and 66% of the entire population are employed in the agriculture industry. And let's look at the United States, for example. The total arable land is 16.6%, and that's for 330 million people, and 10.9% of the population is employed under the agricultural industry in the US, while Nepal has 66%. This is not to compare the two countries. This is only for statistical purposes. It is to clearly indicate that we do have potential. It is not the case that we are not doing well in the agricultural industry, or it's because we are geographically limited to growing crops and feeding our population. We are perfectly capable of overfeeding everyone. And yet, growing up, I remember reading on the news that little girls my age in the rural areas of Nepal were being sold by their families in order not to starve. Some were dropping out of schools because of the unavailability of basic needs, such as food, clean water, even though sent through aid, would be unable to reach these rural and poverty-stricken places. Education and health were secondary. It was simply out of the equation. And all of this could be reasoned to due to the lack of infrastructures. And the lack of infrastructures could be reasoned to by poor and unstable government and political institutions. This hunger was not intentional. It was not man-made like the one in Yemen. This hunger was solvable and is solvable. We are starting to see visible improvements. If you look at the Global Hunger Index, Nepal's 2020 Global Hunger Index score is 19.5, and it's considered slightly moderate and is down from 37.4 from 2000. That is quite a bit of an improvement. And Nepal's rate of child stunting has also declined significantly from 57.1% in 2001 to 36% in 2016, which is still unacceptably high, but in relative to what it once was, is an improvement. These child stunting and hunger index is due to the unavailability of nutritious foods timely reaching the places. Although we do see some visible improvements, I do get to often now enjoy my Manangi apples, but I worry as I see Nepal failing to maintain political stability again. And now that I'm aware of how congruous political stability is with economic development and development overall, and they all rely on one another, to be honest, I am a bit worried. But for now, I'll choose to stay cautiously optimistic, but I remain uncertain for how long.